Hi everybody. Today's Friday, November 1st. Welcome back, Eric.
Whoop, you froze up there.
Can you hear me, Larry?
Yeah, now, yeah, you froze there momentarily.
Yeah, okay. Right now is okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Let's welcome back, Larry.
yes.
Friday again. Let's start, Larry, with an article in New York Times. It says that the supreme leader of Iran has ordered to attack Israel. And how do you find it right now? Do you think that Iran wants to attack Israel? Because in the West, mainly in the West, they're talking about this.
Why is the supreme leader of Iran talking to the New York Times? You know, I mean, I find I'm skeptical, candidly, because who wrote the article? Does it have a byline? It wouldn't be David Sanger, would it be?
Let me check it out for you. Yeah. It's fortunately I cannot check it out right now because let me check it. Yeah. I don't have
Okay.
subscribe to New York Times. That's why I cannot check it out.
Yeah, I would. You don't have a subscription to the New York Times?
I don't have, no.
Yeah, but if you just go to nytimes.com, it should bring up the headlines anyway, and you can see who wrote it.
Yeah. Anyway.
Because it's always important to check out, when something like that gets written.
Let me check it out here.
Let's see. Or was this from the yesterday?
Yeah.
Because there are some workarounds that you can actually get to the article.
You can access it through other sites, but they don't mention the writer of this article. Let me. If I'm not mistaken, is Ronnie Reyes.
Reyes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Because I check it.
It'd be
New York Post.
Okay. Let me put it this way. It'd be one thing. Was this New York Times or New York Post?
New York Times.
Okay. So back in the day when the New York Times used to have correspondents based in Tehran, then you could say, it might be reasonable to expect them to give breaking news like the Ayatollah saying, hey, we're going to attack Israel. But they don't have that anymore. They've really eviscerated their overseas correspondence. Nothing like what they used to be. So I always look at that kind of information coming in something like the New York Times is an intelligence information operation being leaked by the CIA or by Mossad, always designed to portray Iran as the aggressor, as the villain, without actually reporting any news of substance.
The other thing that they reported that Iran going to attack Israel from Iraq, and in your opinion,
why? I mean, God, the stupidity of this is ridiculous. So they haven't been paying attention over the last year. There have been drones and missiles or rockets launched from Iraq into Israel. because there are a variety of Shia insurgent groups, or groups at least loyal. They have some affinity with Iran, but they're not under the direct control of Iran. And because we've seen in some instances they've gotten angry with the Iranians for not being aggressive enough. If Iran decides to strike back at Israel, and I've said that they may, based upon some comments that were put out the other day from one of the IRGC generals, that they'll do it from Iran. The logistics involved of having to move stuff into Iraq, it's like, why go to Iraq? So that's just silly.
So far, with what we've seen from the behavior of Iran, they attacked Israel directly from Iran. And right now, in the Israeli media, they're talking about that Iran may attack them from Iraq. Do you think that they're suggesting Iran attacking them from Iraq? That could be the reason that we're not going to see any sort of response from Israel.
This could be Israel laying a predicate to justify launching some airstrikes into Iraq, to go after some of the rocket sites that those Iraqi groups have been using. That I think that's what's going on. The fact that that's appearing in the Jewish press is, they're always trying to create a narrative, a story that will justify some more war crimes.
And on the other hand, I don't know if you watched the interview of Naftali Bennett to Fox News. The way he was talking about it seems that in their mind they still want to attack Iran.
Oh yeah, no. Listen, the ardent Zionists are convinced that they've got to destroy. If they destroy the leadership in Iran, Iran will crumble and Israel will be safe. I mean, it's delusional. They really believe that they can defeat Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. And Israel is right now starting to feel the pain. They've had about 1,000 casualties total, 95, less than 100 killed, but more than 900 wounded during their invasion into southern Lebanon over the last month. And they've got, I think well over 4,000 casualties over the course of the year from Gaza. That's killed and wounded, mostly wounded. The economy's not doing well at all. People are leaving Israel. They put themselves into a position that they do not have the military power to hit and destroy Iran militarily in one attack or in 20 attacks. They just don't have it. Even if they use nukes, they don't have it. Yeah, they can cause some damage. And all they're going to do is incentivize Iran. If Israel really carries through on launching more attacks, they're going to guarantee that Iran will destroy them. Much easier to destroy Israel than it is Iran. Israel's a tiny little place, comparatively. It doesn't have as many bases spread out. It doesn't have military bases built underground for security, as Iran has. Iran's embarked on this, more than 20 years ago, because they recognize that, if the United States can go in and invade Iraq, they can certainly come and try to attack us, and we're going to be ready. So it's just madness on the part of the people like Bennett and others. But he's not alone. I know people that keep insisting that they're just a strike away from crumbling the entire Arab Muslim world, that they can take it over and destroy it. They're that crazy.
And the supreme leader of Iran yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, said that we don't have to exaggerate or understate what has happened in the Israeli attack on Iran. But Larry, out of this, and on the other hand, Israelis are talking about they have destroyed everything. This is an opportunity that Naftali Bennett in his interview is talking about, that we have destroyed their defense system. This is the best opportunity for us to attack and cut the head of octopus, as he.
Yeah. I mean,
How do you think that what is he doing is part of the reality of what they've done to Iran in the latest attack?
no, like I said, these folks are divorced from reality. That's the problem. If Israel had actually inflicted that kind of damage on Iran, where are the pictures? They'd be out there they could bring up satellite image after satellite image, picture after picture of the destruction. And you know as well as I do, social media in Iran would be white hot. They'd be demanding retaliation. They'd be demanding action for this humiliation we suffered. You're not seeing that. Well, why? Because the Israelis are lying. I mean, lying has become sort of the one currency that Israel and the United States and Europeans traffic in. That seems to be their go-to play. Let's lie. I recall when my first year of CIA training, there was this top secret site. We were taken to this place where they train with explosives. And oddly enough, they sold merchandise with logos on it that said, "Admit nothing, deny everything, make counter accusations." Well, that's what Israel's doing. But apart from admitting nothing, they're admitting, man, we kicked their ass. We showed them. And, there was an attack. And yes, they did inflict some damage. But it didn't devastate the Iranian military. I mean, for God's sake, Iran and Iraq fought a war for several years. They left millions dead. And neither country was destroyed in the process. How Israel thinks that it can accomplish with one air raid what Iraq, with the backing of the United States, couldn't accomplish in 3 years, beyond me.
Here is what, pardon me. Here's what Bennett said in this interview in terms of how they're going to manage the situation in the Middle East.
Prime Minister, I want to get your reaction to this, if I could. J.D. Vance spoke about American involvement in the Middle East and its role in the Israeli-Iran conflict. Listen to this, and then I'll get your comments.
Israel has the right to defend itself, but America's interest is sometimes going to be distinct. Like sometimes we're going to have overlapping interests, and sometimes we're going to have distinct interests. And our interest, I think, very much is in not going to war with Iran, right? It would be a huge distraction of resources. It would be massively expensive to our country.
So there you have it, J.D. Vance, Prime Minister, playing down the conflict with Iran. What say you?
Well, I think indeed, as he suggests, there are sometimes overlapping interests, sometimes not. In this case, I think the interests are overlapping because Israel is essentially doing the hard work for the free world. We're fighting 7 fronts of radical Islamic terror, which we well know that if it doesn't stop in the Middle East, it'll ultimately hit the shores of the United States of America, as we've seen in 9/11 and other cases. So we are not asking America to fight our wars. We're not asking America to go out to war for us. It's actually quite the opposite. We are fighting on behalf of America and the free world. We're sending our sons and daughters to fight this horrible terror apparatus. We're losing boys and girls, but and these are true heroes, but we're doing it while understanding that if we don't do it, no one will do this.
Larry, if you just put Zelensky Instead of that.
Yeah,
It's the same type of rhetoric.
I mean, this guy's Zelensky with no hair, okay? He looks like a cue ball. I mean, Israel is a terrorist state. It is the only country now in the Middle East that's actually engaged in terrorism, as defined by Bibi Netanyahu several years ago on William F. Buckley's show, where he said terrorism is use of violence for political means against civilians. That's what Israel's doing. They're using terrorism to justify their own acts of terrorism. And, you know, they try to portray Hezbollah and Hamas as you know, hardcore terrorist outfits. They're not. Are they religiously motivated? Yes. Have they said things like death to Israel? Sure. But what they ignore is that the terrorists that attacked the United States on 9/11, the Al-Qaeda group, it was Al-Qaeda that was also attacking Shia Muslims like Hezbollah and Hamas. The rise of ISIS was even directed, going directly at Iranians. And that's what Iran was, in fact, fighting, helping Syria fight on the ground. So, you know, then it's just, they create this cartoon villain to justify their actions. They're killing civilians in horrific numbers. You know, when you combine the death tolls in Gaza with what's going on in Lebanon now, I think we're well over 50,000.
And what he's arguing in this video, Larry, that he says that a conflict, a war with Iran, the United States with Iran, would benefit the United States. On the other hand, J.D. Vance doesn't believe that.
Yeah. So explain to me exactly how the United States would attack Iran. Okay. I mean, let's get down to the practicalities. Okay, we could say we could launch some airstrikes. Well, pay attention to what's happened in the Red Sea with the Houthis. All right? Operation Prosperity Guardian has been underway now for almost 12 months. And we have not stopped the Houthis, and we have not been able to reopen the Red Sea to all maritime traffic. So our use, you know, we can go try to bomb Iran repeatedly, and what's going to happen then? We're going to run out of missiles that can be launched because we're not producing enough. And if we put any aircraft in Iran, they're going to get shot down. So, okay, explain that. How do we go to war? What, we're going to send an army? They're going to land amphibiously somewhere? All right. How are you going to sustain that? Because you're going to need probably about 2 to 3 million troops in order to suppress Iran, because it's a big ass country and it has a large military. Again, this is this fantasy stuff. You know, I was involved some years past in some U.S. military exercises where attacking targets in Iran were part of the scenario. Not easy at all. And it's it's one of those things. The reason you conduct those exercises is you go, ooh, yeah, we sound like a good idea on paper, but we can't do that. I mean, physically, we lack the resources. So this is this fantasy that the United States can destroy Iran, short of using nuclear. Even if we use nuclear weapons, all we're going to do is launch World War III. Because Iran's got a relationship now, a defensive relationship with Russia. And it's had a de facto military relationship also with China. Nobody in the West is paying attention to this. I wrote the other day on Sonar 21 about the delusions of the Zionists, because they were spinning this story that the Israeli attack on Iran a week ago illustrated that Iran is now more isolated than ever. It was like, are you guys paying attention? Iran just got back from BRICS, where they were warmly embraced because they're a member of BRICS. Not a single member of BRICS stood up and said, "Oh, Iran, you're a bad guy. You need to stop this." No, not one. And Iran is in the process of signing a mutual defense pact with Russia. It's like, and they had just completed a naval exercise with Oman and Russia in the Persian Gulf, or in around the Straits of Hormuz. And then they've announced plans to conduct a military exercise with Saudi Arabia. Who's isolated? It's Israel. The other day, the UN had voted to lift the embargo and sanctions on Cuba. 187-2. The only two who voted against that, United States and Israel. Hell, even Ukraine voted for it. I mean, Ukraine and Russia all on the same side. Think about that. And here, this imbecile in Israel is claiming that Iran's isolated. That's why I say, how do you deal with people when they believe in fantasies, and they believe them so deeply that no matter reason, no matter evidence can shake them? It's a form of mental illness.
As you mentioned, Larry, if you remember, Netanyahu with those two maps at the UN showed the blessing and the evil countries.
Yeah.
Here is one of the blessing countries that was the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia talking about the normalization of the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Israel.
Certainly, normalization with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is not just a risk, it is off the table until we have a resolution to Palestinian statehood. But I would say more than that. I would say that it is not just the issue of normalization with the kingdom that is at risk. I would say that the security of the region as a whole is at risk if we do not address the rights of the Palestinians, if we do not find our way to a pathway that leads us to a Palestinian state, because that's the only way we can ensure that we can focus on the future, that we can focus on cooperation, that we can focus on integration. So I would hope that the leadership of Israel sees that it is not just the right thing to do, it is not just the moral thing to do, it is not just the just thing to do to give the Palestinians their rights and their state. It is also in the security and strategic interest of Israel to do so. And that's, I think, up to them to decide.
Yeah, even Saudi Arabia is not agreeing on what Israel is talking about right now.
No, he didn't mean it. No, he's lying. Yeah. The problem with, again, he's trying to be reasonable. There's nobody reasonable in charge in Israel. They've made it clear what they're going to do. They're going to exterminate the Palestinians. Whether that means physically killing them or physically removing them from the land or starving them, they don't care. They just want them to die. They just want them to go away. It's reminiscent of the movie that came out, 10 years ago with Will Smith, and it was about the aliens taking over the planet. And at one point, the president of the United States is confronted with this alien that's in this laboratory, hidden laboratory. And the president's thinking, oh, I can negotiate, what is it that you want? Typical, let's negotiate. And the alien comes back, that you die. Oh, I guess there's no negotiation on that. Well, that is exactly what Israel, Israel's position is not, okay, hey, Hamas, Hezbollah, if you promise not to attack us, we'll live in peace here. We'll live side by side because we recognize that you also have a right to exist. No, they don't. The Zionists do not accept the Palestinians as having a right to exist. In fact, one of the most sort of disgusting things I keep hearing from a lot of Americans is, well, none of the other Arab states want those Palestinians either. Okay, so now we got the ultimate stateless people that are supposedly despised and rejected by all. And this is Israel believes that they're entitled to that land. And someone said, well, you know, it says in the Bible that God promised this land to the Jews. I said, yeah, who wrote the book? Isn't it funny that the guys who write the book, hey, guess what? God says this is all belongs to us. I learned that at State Department. Those who control the document, those who write the document, they get to control the policy process. I'm not saying I reject the Bible as truth, but I'd say that, you know, we need to step back and take a big deep breath to think that this loving God is justifying the murder of all these women and children. Sorry. I think that's garbage. It's wrong. And I'm just becoming more outraged with each passing day because what we're seeing is Israel's not letting up with using the excuse of terrorism to kill civilians and killing them, 100 a day. The world leaders are in a position to do something. Turkey is in a position to do something. Azerbaijan is in a position to do something. I think, frankly, Russia and China are in a position to apply more pressure. But they continue to let them get away with it. And, I think they're going to overstep one of these days. And this war, they're already at war with Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas, but it's going to get out of control. And I think there's an retired Israeli general who's now reiterated just the other day. He was quoted in a piece by Alistair Crook that this is going to lead to the destruction of Israel. Israel as a nation cannot continue the contradictions about what it's doing, or it's not making it safer. Because they keep saying, "Oh yeah, we've almost destroyed all of Hezbollah's rockets," and they keep throwing the rockets attacks in. The thing is, a lot of the Hezbollah rockets don't hit and cause death and destruction on the scale of what the Israelis are causing. If they get to that stage, then Israel's going to be in real trouble.
Yesterday, we've learned that the U.S. Ambassador Johnson to Lebanon is trying to do everything at her disposal. I'm not related to her, by the way. Okay. Yeah, she's trying to isolate Hezbollah, talking about post-Hezbollah era in Lebanon. When you have a country that is under attack from Israel, in the southern part of Lebanon, they're fighting with Israelis. At the same time, they're trying to do something behind Hezbollah with Lebanese government in order to isolate Hezbollah. Do you think that in the mind of these people who are implementing this type of policy, is that still a viable choice to go in that direction?
The United States has been trying to do this now for well over 40 years. They tried it back in 1983. In fact, the United States thought it was such, we had a lot more power and influence in the Middle East. We were more influential in 1983, 84. And what Ronald Reagan discovered to his chagrin, and who was telling the story? Was it Larry Wilkerson? That when the decision was made, I guess George Shultz who I think was a great Secretary of State, but boy, he screwed this one up. Thought it was a good idea to put Americans into Lebanon to help, quell the Shia uprising, because the Shias were, rising up against Israel. And apparently Caspar Weinberg, who was Secretary of Defense back then, went to Reagan and said, what the hell are we doing? This is crazy. It's going to get Americans killed. And Reagan said, well, I've made the decision. And, so in 1983, in April, you had the U.S. Embassy blown up, I believe. And then in October, the Marine barrack, the building being used by the Marines for housing, temporary housing, was blown up and killed. I can't remember how many. It was 250, but killed a lot of Marines. And this was in response because the United States was hurling shells from battleships into the Bekaa Valley. We pulled out. So here we are again with this, ambassador who was, probably wearing diapers back in 1983 and, has no memory of this, trying to repeat history, only this time it's different. The United States is losing clout and influence. We're losing that. Because the nations, they're looking, here's the United States who's, we're sending Operation Prosperity Guardian, we're going to stop those Houthis. And the Houthis kicked our ass. I mean, the United States can sit there and look in the mirror and claim, we're the fairest of them all, we got the best military. We could not reopen the Red Sea. And the Houthis, it's not like they're a first-class world army. Okay? But the rest of the nations are sitting there going, this is like calling in a guy, you think you're dealing with some guy who's a neighborhood bully. And you say, hey, I'm going to bring in this big guy to fight him. And then your guy goes out to fight him, and the neighborhood bully, beats him to a pulp. That's sort of what's going on here. I'm not suggesting that the Houthis are a neighborhood bully, but the Houthis have shown remarkable resilience in being able to fight back against one of the most technologically advanced armies in the world, and we can't stop them. So this notion that we're going to get the Lebanese convinced to put themselves, trust us, we got your back. Man, whenever you hear that, that's like a warning that you're going to be suffering a rape from behind, because never trust the United States. If we tell you we got your back, run in terror.
Larry, here is General Petraeus talking about the solution for Gaza.
Would be a vision for the future of the Palestinian people that is similar to the vision that we presented to the people of Iraq before we conducted the major operations that we did there during the surge. And we would go to the people of Fallujah and we would tell them in advance of our operation, we are going to make your lives better. We're going to do it by getting Al-Qaeda out of your neighborhoods. And then we're going to stay in those neighborhoods. We're going to create gated communities, essentially. It's an accurate description, but with much more effective walls. In fact, we would tell them, I said, look, it costs a lot of money to be in a gated community in Florida, and we're going to give it to you for free here in Fallujah.
Petraeus appears to get dumber with each passing day. Because he's lying about what happened in Iraq. What happened in Iraq was the United States unleashed an insurgency, and we didn't understand the country, and when Jerry Bremer, under orders from Donald Rumsfeld, sent the Ba'athist army home, still with their guns, but say, hey, no more money for you guys. Well, they were getting paid to plant bombs and attack U.S. troops. The only way we stopped that, because I was there in May of 2006, and I had a conversation with one of the colonels. In fact, I should read you. I was just reading it yesterday I came across my notebook with my notes. And what was, here, let me grab this. This is pretty funny when I read this. I learned from Colonel Nichols that AQIZ, the Al-Qaeda in Iraq, is funding ops from money skimmed / stolen from U.S. assistance. In other words, we don't need outside funding because the United States is providing the funding to the terrorists. Okay, so that's what was going on back then. And what did we do to stop those terrorist attacks? We went to the sheikhs and we said, hey, we'd like to hire your fighters to provide protection. It was just like an old mafia protection scheme. We paid them off, and so now the guys are getting paid not to attack us. That's how the attacks came down. Not his bullshit. I mean, really. Oh, yeah, we're going to make your neighborhood a gated community. And look at our nice uniformed guards. It's just more arrogance and stupidity on the part of somebody who, by virtue of education, should know better.
Larry, right now in the United States, we're approaching the day that everybody would choose he wants to have a Republican or a Democrat candidate to be his next president, his or her next president.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Rudy Giuliani talking at the Trump campaign, talking that we are all in favor of Israel and we're going to support Israel on one side. On the other hand, we had Bill Clinton in Michigan trying to convince people about the policy in the Middle East. Here is what he said.
About the hardest issue here in Michigan is the Middle East. And I have to be careful what I say because there's only one president at a time and none of us can get ahead of where we're going. But I think we're going to have to essentially start again on the peace process. And I understand why young Palestinian and Arab Americans in Michigan think too many people have died. I get that. But if you lived in one of those kibbutzim in Israel, right next to Gaza, where the people there were the most pro-friendship with Palestine, most pro-two-state solution of any of the Israeli communities, were the ones right next to Gaza. And Hamas butchered them. And so then the people who criticize it are essentially saying, yeah, but look how many people you've killed in retaliation. So how many is enough for you to kill to punish them for the terrible things they did? That all sounds nice until you realize, what would you do if it was your family and you hadn't done anything but support a homeland for the Palestinians, and one day they come for you and slaughter the people in your village? You would say, well, you'll have to forgive me, I'm not keeping score that way. It isn't how many we've had to kill, because Hamas makes sure that they're shielded by civilians. They'll force you to kill civilians if you want to defend yourself.
Man, am I glad he's no longer president. I mean, it's just despicable.
And he's trying to win the votes of those people who are not happy with the situation.
Yeah, this notion, again, it's another lie that's pushed, that Israel, that Hamas and Hezbollah are using civilians as human shields, and the only way to kill them is you got to kill all those civilians too. No, absolutely not true. And that was an argument the British could have used in the American colonies back in 1776, because we had Minutemen, we had militia. I had 28 ancestors. They were civilians, but they were fighting against someone that they basically saw as an outside invader. And let's be candid, that's what Israel is. Israel, you had a few Jews that had continued to live in this land that we now call Israel, Palestine. But the vast majority, the vast influx that came in after the end of World War II came out of Europe. For the survivors of the Holocaust, and felt entitled to secure land there, and the rest of the world, in a moment of temporary insanity, went along with it. Israel throughout its history has always blamed. There has been no empathy at all in the West for the claims of those inhabitants who were already there, to having these outsiders come in and take their land away. What right do they have to this? It was an artificial right that was created. This war is going to go on until I don't think Israel will survive it. Not that I'm looking forward to that or hoping for that. I'm just, stepping back analytically, looking at it. Israel's not sitting on, mass resources. Yeah, they've got some natural gas that's off the coast of Gaza now that the Palestinians ostensibly controlled, but they're no longer going to. They're going to try to use that, but they don't have resources both in terms of population, in terms of food, in terms of oil. They're dependent. And let's be candid, they're heavily dependent upon U.S. foreign aid. If that dries up, they're in trouble. But they can't sustain this military campaign that they're engaged in right now. If Hamas keeps firing these rockets and missiles, Israel's now, they've admitted, they've got to be careful what air defense systems they use, because they're running out, and they don't have a way to easily replace that.
It seems that there are some talks between the government in Lebanon and Washington, which Hezbollah is part of these talks. They want to have some sort of ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel. Netanyahu yesterday said, or today said, that they're not happy with these type of attitudes. Do you think that Israel is the situation in the southern part of Lebanon sustainable for Israel?
No. I mean, look, Hezbollah is not going to agree to that. I don't see that at all. There is, I'll repeat it again, all this talk about negotiations and negotiated settlement. There is no foundation for a negotiated settlement. When one party, the Zionists, believe that this land is their land, and under no circumstances are they to surrender it to Amalek, because that's what Netanyahu said. What are they supposed to do according to the religious book to Amalek? They're to kill them, destroy them. Women, children, across the board. What are you negotiating then over? Seriously, there's no negotiation. It's just we keep trotting it out there as a distraction. So they can. All of this is political jockeying. The only way this is going to be resolved is with it's going to be either The death of the Zionists or the death of the Palestinians? I'm afraid to say.
Right now in the Middle East, the situation with Saudi Arabia, UAE is not in favor of Israel. Even Turkey, as you mentioned, is not prepared to be more direct or more radical or more reasonable toward Israel. But on the other hand, we have Russia and China, as you mentioned, they're not doing the maximum possible at their disposal, but they're trying to send some sort of message to Washington and Israel. It seems all Israel has right now is the next president of the United States. Do you think with these two candidates, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, whoever wins the 2024 presidential election, is Israel still hoping that they're going to achieve or they're going to win more support from the United States?
Well, they're betting that they're going to be better off with Donald Trump than Kamala Harris. And Trump is more in the Zionist camp than Harris is. But the money behind the political process has been moving more to Trump than to Harris. So, and you've got a lot of very prominent, wealthy American Jews who have come out very, very publicly now for Donald Trump. Bill Ackman of Pershing Square is one example. You know, he's worth like $40 billion. And in the past, he was, really a Democrat. He supported Democrat causes, gave to Democrat institutions. And now he's backing Trump. The widow of Sheldon Adelson has reportedly given Trump, several $1 million for his campaign. So, I think it's likely to see a pretty strong movement away from among Jews who in the past traditionally voted for Democrats to support Donald Trump. The irony is too, you're seeing that also around the Arab, the Arab and Muslim American population. They're disgusted with the Democrats. The saving grace with Trump is that he does tend to be a pretty pragmatic negotiator. I mean, he'll stake out these extreme positions, but that's the starting point of negotiations, and he can back off. I think he would genuinely try to broker a real peace. But as I said, the problem is it's on the Zionist side because they are so strident in their view that this land is our land. It's been given to us by God, and we got to destroy Amalek. We got to destroy these unbelievers.
Larry, why is the West so obsessed with the news story about the North Korean soldiers in Russia? What's behind this, in your opinion?
Squirrel! Something to. It's intended to be a distraction. I mean, it's so ridiculous that I believe it was created by the CIA. Again, the story first appeared in the New York Times on October 8th, I believe, with David Sanger. Sanger, who's a good, CIA whispers in his ear and he writes it out. So you got to figure out which narrative the West is pushing. So here was Lloyd Austin talking about this yesterday. Yeah, the reason for Russia's losing so many soldiers, has had so many catastrophic losses that it's having to call upon the North Koreans to continue fighting. And I'm dude, I mean, there were only two possibilities. Either you're a damn liar, and you know you're lying your ass off, or you're being lied to on a massive scale by your Defense Intelligence Agency and the Central Intelligence Agency. Because I don't have to have any access to classified information, but I can just read the press. And in fact, the New York Times today has a story on its front page showing the dramatic, rapid advances of the Russians forward in a way that never happened a year ago, taking large chunks of territory in Ukraine now with the Ukrainian army retreating. Russia's not in any kind of situation where they've suffered catastrophic losses. In fact, the actual analysis, part of it counting obituaries and other things on social media, determined that Russian casualties over the last 3 months have been declining, not increasing. But here he is saying, oh, that's why the North Koreans are coming in. Okay, but then they turn around and say, oh my God, we got to stop those Russians. If we don't stop them here, they're going to take over all of Europe. Well, wait a second. I thought they had suffered catastrophic losses and they have to get 10,000, that they're so desperate they need 10,000 North Koreans to come, save their bacon. But now that weakened army is going to take over Europe? Come on, guys. If you're gonna build a story, at least have some consistency about it. Make sure you don't contradict yourself. So, here's a news flash. Russia and North Korea have had military relations for more than 75 years. Okay? Russia, under the Soviet Union, pilots flew in the Korean War, fought against Americans on behalf of North Korea. The North Koreans and the Russians have had long-standing military relations and training. The Russians have had a much closer relationship with the North Koreans than the Chinese. I mean, most Americans say, oh, they're all Asian, they all look alike. So those Asians... No, the Russians have worked closely with the North Koreans, and North Koreans are in the Far East, out around Vladivostok, yes, conducting training, getting trained by the Russians. But they are not headed over to Ukraine, certainly not needed in Ukraine on behalf of the Russians. This is just the lie. It's a complete distraction.
How's the situation, Larry? The latest information that we have in Ukraine, the conflict that is going on between Russia and Ukraine. We knew that before the BRICS summit, they were talking about that right after the summit, Russia would just intensify the attacks on Ukrainian army. What's the situation right now?
No, it's the Russian army is pressing forward very rapidly, not in just one or two locations. Once they get past Pokrovsk, and take that, and Izium, then it's basically it's flat, open farmland all the way to the Dnieper River. So we could very well see by the end of December that Ukrainians have been completely pushed out of Donetsk and Luhansk. I saw, there's some people that write on Substack, one guy named Big Surge, and I had a lot of respect for his writing, but, he was insisting that this war can stretch on through 2026. It's not possible. The only way that would be possible is if the West is said, hey, man, we're going to continue to pour billions of dollars into Ukraine. That ain't happening, especially if Donald Trump's elected. But even if Kamala Harris wins, it's not happening because the United States is not in a position to continue to sustain. Our economy is not doing well. And just today they were expecting 100,000 new jobs to be added. It was only 12,000. And so they're coming up and you say, oh, that was the hurricane. The hurricane did that. You know what? I'd argue it's a little bit just the opposite, because, yeah, the hurricane put some people out of work, but it also created a lot of other work for repairs, rebuilding, construction. Yeah, so, you know, when economically, the United States is not going to be in a position to sustain Ukraine. But Ukraine's got a manpower shortage that they don't have any way to correct it. They've balked at drafting 18-year-olds. But even if they draft 18-year-olds, a lot of those people are going to flee the country. And even if they train them, they can't train them in in Ukraine, because the Russians can hit the training bases and kill them. So this is, we're looking at the end game here. And it will, I'd be, genuinely shocked if it lasts, much beyond March or April of next year. It could end even sooner than that.
Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today. Great pleasure as always.
Thank you for having me. We will see you, I guess, on Monday sometime.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thanks.